Hey everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for joining me today. I have a fun interactive card to share using the Simon Says Stamp Cute Camper set. And the interactive element is a die set from Lawn Fawn called Pull and Slide Surprise. So before we get started, I just wanted to show you what that mechanism looks like. It's super fun and easy to put together, but all you have to do is pull the tab at the top and the elements on the card will pop up almost like an easel. It's a fun way to display the card as an easel, or it can be flattened and stood upright like a regular card. So I'm going to get started with making the card here using the Cute Camper set, and I'm going to stamp all but one image. I prepared my Hammermill cardstock with some anti-static powder, and then I'll stamp with VersaFine Clear ink. Since this is a pigment ink, I'm going to trap that ink with some clear embossing powder so that I can color my images with Copic markers. This is my favorite way to stamp and color with Copics now because it's a sure way to not get any streaking of that black ink, but you also get crisp, clean, dark black lines. Once heat set and it's safe to color with the Copic markers, I'll begin by coloring all of the images that I stamped. Now I'm going pretty fast here, but as usual, I am using 3 to 4 colors for each area depending on how big they are, and starting with the dark color, adding a little bit where I want the darkest shadow to be, and then blending out from the darkest color to the lightest color. So here on the tent, I'm doing a red at the top corners and in the crevices with the darkest color just a little bit, and then blending out with a lighter color as I go until I reach the very end. Most of the time that's 3 markers, but for the tent it was 4 by the time I got to the very corner of that tent at the bottom right there. For the greenery, I'm using 2 different colors of green. I did a brighter color for the bushes in the back, and then for the pines, I'm using a more flicking motion for the coloring so that you can see more texture of those pines. And I'm flicking downwards, starting from the top using the darkest color and then flicking towards the middle and bottom with the lighter colors. Now moving on to the little campfire scene, I have colored the logs and the flames. So the flames are going to cast a yellow hue, and so I did some of that yellow on the top of the logs a little bit. I don't know if you can tell yet, but once I'm done coloring all of these critters and their accessories and the little s'mores marshmallow stick, I'm going to go back in with that light yellow and kind of cast that same glow onto these critters' bodies so that it looks like that light is being cast from the fire. These cute campers are just adorable, and I love that they're all huddled around this little fire with their tea and snuggled with a scarf and one that's roasting a marshmallow. So I'll color all of those, and here I go in with that yellow, and I'm just flicking and coloring where I think that cast is going to be, and then I'll finish off here with some blush by dotting their cheeks with some pinks. Now using the coordinating dies, I'm going to die cut all of those images that I've colored, and then I'll set them aside so I can work on the background. Now to start with, I only did 1 background, but I realized as I went that I need actually 3 backgrounds because we need one that's going to be in the back once we pull up that tab, and then that tab is going to be showing too. So that's 3 different backgrounds that you need to make. So for the main background, which would be a standard background if I wasn't turning this into an interactive card, I did the top in a sunset hue with some yellow and pink and purple. Then for the bottom, I'm doing some greenery for grass, and that's right where I think the horizon is going to be. So I just kind of eyeballed it, and I'm going to ink blend that green all the way down, leaving a spot in the center a little bit because I want to add some yellow because I want to reintroduce that glow from the campfire just like I did on the images with the critters. Now to make this interactive, I'm going to pull in the Lawn Fawn Pull and Slide Surprise die, and I'm just going to use the main components to turn this into a slider card and not use any of the other accessories dies. But this is such a great set to have if you want to have an easy to use interactive die set. So this is where I realized I needed to have a second piece, and so I ink blended off camera just the sky portion and elongated that because I knew it was going to be a pull-up piece that's going to extend my scenery basically upward. And there is a little die that will indicate that you need to pull up on that tab that's exposed. So I ink blended more of that purple and used that little pull tab die to die cut that piece that I ink blended in purple. Then there's a track piece, and I die cut that in white, and it die cuts 2 white strips that will act as a track for that tab behind that main panel, and you won't even see it, so it's okay to die cut in any color that you want. Before I put this mechanism together, I wanted to splatter the sky with some stars. So I'm using the new white splatter medium and just flicking some white splatter all over the top where the sky portions are. I let them dry, and now we'll put together the mechanism for this slider surprise. So that main panel is cut with a window, and there are 3 score lines, and we want to alternate the score lines so that it builds a mountain. You'll see what I mean when I am done reinforcing all of these score lines. Then I'll flatten it out as best I can and flip it over so that we can adhere those 2 tracks along the sides of this panel. Next, I'll add adhesive as far as I can to the right and left of this panel before adding those tracks. Those tracks are cut perfectly to fit along the edge there, so it's going to be obvious to you where these 2 tracks go. And we're just providing a little ledge so that when we flip over that tab piece, it's going to fit inside those tracks. Before I do that, I'm going to add this tab indicator here to the top of that tab piece. This piece is pre-scored, so I'm just going to add some glue and then fold it right over the top of that tab. And I'll use my reverse tweezers to hold it in place as it dries. And while it's drying, I'm going to use some 1/4 inch double-sided adhesive here and add adhesive along the bottom of that flap. And that's going to be adhered to the tab piece. So if you line up the top portions of these 2 panels, and the lip of that tab indicator that I adhered on there is going to fit right into the cutout of that front panel. And everything should line up. I think I misaligned it just by a little bit because you can see some white, but that's okay. I'm just going to cut that off with a pair of scissors. So here I'm just testing out the mechanism, making sure that it slides well. Then I'll just take a pair of scissors and trim off that white excess that's hanging out at the bottom there. And we have our mechanism piece, which is going to be the top and front of our card. The top of that mountain fold that we folded into this panel is going to be what's popped up when we pull on that tab. So I'm going to make this tree line image the top of the pull-up surprise scene. So I've added some liquid adhesive just below that score line and attached my image to that. So I pulled on the tab to make sure that I didn't get any adhesive hanging off the sides because we don't want anything to obstruct the pull mechanism. Then I'll build the little campfire scene here towards the bottom, and I'm adding these particular images with a bit of thin foam squares, so to give the card a little bit of dimension as these images sit in front of the tree line. And you can kind of see where that yellow glow kind of goes from the grass to the images of the critters. The area above the tree line is kind of bare, so I used that opportunity to stamp a sentiment there. And this was where I realized I needed another background piece. So I measured the front panel, and it was 3.5 inches by 4 3/4 inches. So I cut a panel, and now I'm going to ink blend it to match that top panel, mostly for the bottom half of the grassy area, which will be exposed when I pull on that tab. Then for the reveal portion of the pull-up surprise, I'm just going to add a second sentiment. That way, when the card is popped up as an easel, there's another sentiment that can be visible. To center it just right, I put that other piece on top of this one and made sure to align the sentiment perfectly inside the window. And after that's stamped, I can attach it by adding glue on the tracks of that top front panel. I'm not going to add glue at the bottom or anything like that. You can at the bottom, but you just want to make sure that it doesn't get anywhere near that slider piece. You also want to make sure you add a very small amount of glue to those tracks because you don't want them oozing out and then getting on the slider piece that you have to pull and slide up and down. So I'm going to test that out now and make sure that it slides smoothly. And once I know it's smooth and everything is good to go, I can add adhesive to the back of all of it and adhere this to a card base. And now we have a finished pull and slide surprise card using these cute campers. I love that I was able to create this fun interactive scene using these interactive dies. If you're interested in anything that I use, the color combinations for the Copics and ink blending, make sure to check out the coordinating blog post where everything will be listed for you, and everything will be linked in the descriptions below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye, everyone.